Hello and welcome back to the Avid Media Composer tutorial. So in part two, I basically want to look at importing media and showcasing what you can do at this stage when you start importing assets into your Avid timeline and bins. So we'll get straight into it. There are two ways to import media into Avid Media Composer. The first one is if you go into either of your bins, so video or audio rushes, you can put your cursor in there, right click and go to input. Under input, you'll notice there are two options, source browser and import media. Now for the purposes of today, I'm going to be using the source browser. Now normally you can have this, sometimes in Avid this is crossed off like this, so this is what you get in your timeline depending on how the window's formatted. So if I right click, input source browser, it brings it back up, and as you can see, the source browser is effectively just a window for enabling us to pick and choose what media assets we want to bring into Avid. This is a very useful tool, and it allows us to do one of two things within this. So as you'll notice as we go down here, we have two options to our footage, link and import. Now, very important, basically Avid traditionally would transcode all of its audio and video material into its own native codec. So Avid's native codec is Avid DNX HD. Avid DNX HD is very much like Apple's ProRes, so it's basically the Avid equivalent to Final Cut and Apple's codec. But what we can do now is we have two options. So you can, if you select import, so if we find our footage and go to look for it, so on the card 1, we have a selection of different bits of footage, and I want to import QuickTimes. So if we look at this in our source browser, we now have options under import for different codecs, and as I mentioned earlier, you have DNX, different flavors, different versions of DNX HD in here, as well as some other ones. If you're on a Mac, you will have the option for Apple ProRes, but it's wrapped in an MXF file, which is something Avid can read. But a good rule of thumb with any material that you have to transcode when you're working in Avid, always do it in DNX HD, because that is the codec that Avid is designed, well, that's what Avid has designed primarily to work with Avid. And the reasons why we have these codecs available is you can go back the other way, and there is an alternative option to link. The link option allows you to directly import your footage into your bins and start cutting straight away. The one drawback behind doing that is it uses more system resources, so it can be a hardware drain as your project gets bigger and bigger. So the more assets you have, and especially when the timeline grows into quite a complicated one with multiple tracks of video and audio, you may, depending on the speed of your system, may experience hardware, I suppose, strain on the hardware on your computer. So basically your editing experience might lag a little bit. We can kind of negate some of that by actually using the import function. So by importing, as you can see, a new dialog box comes up, and as you'll find with the way Avid works, it loves to transcode material straight away before you begin editing. And the reason for that is that it wants to make your editing experience as fluid and as easy as possible with minimal lag and strain on your system. So by doing this first, you actually give yourself the opportunity to actually look at the video in Avid without it lagging. Obviously with 1080p footage, this isn't the case, but if you're working in high resolutions like UHD or 4K, then you may experience lag issues if you import straight using the link option. So if you have an option and time ahead before you start your edit, always do import. But just as an example, I'll show the import procedure. So I'm just going to pick one file. You can shift select, hold down shift and left click to select multiple clips, as many as you want, and it'll set basically one big transcode going, but it will render it clip by clip. So if you ever need to cancel it, it will pick up. It will only stop at that particular clip that it was at. So it doesn't. Basically, it won't get rid of anything you transcoded previously in the render queue. So we'll just pick one clip for now, a MOV file in QuickTime. And basically, the general rule of thumb with these DNX HD codecs is the higher the number, the higher the bit rate. So DNX HD 36 is the lowest bit rate, and DNX HD 185 is the highest bit rate. At 185 megabits per second, and 36 is just 36 megabits per second. So this is generally for DSLR. That would be mainly for anything that shoots in, I suppose, off a compact flash card from a C200. And these higher codecs are generally for the cinema camera variety. There is another flavor on here that isn't listed for 4K, and it's just called DNX HQ or HR, I believe. So for us, we just want to set it to DNX HD 85 megabits per second, so we get a good bit of quality out of that. And then obviously as you scroll right, you'll see Avid will be asking you where you would like to have your folders put. So basically it needs space to transcode this now, and it'll create brand new video and audio files based off your original. So from this point on, your original QuickTime movies will never be used. And then below that you have a target bin, so where you would like your rushes to go. In this case, I've already created a video and audio rushes bin, and you can see them reflect here. So obviously this is video we're importing, so we want to put it in the video rushes folder. As you can see, when we click import, we now have a new dialog box. And what's going to happen now is you'll see this creating video from Qt for MVI 9109.mov. That's the QuickTime camera file. And this effectively is a transcode bar, so it's transcoding that footage. It is converting it from its QuickTime footage into Avid DNX HD MXF files. And as you can see, it's populated up here in the video rushes bin. So if we expand that, we know it's in Avid DNX HD because if we scroll along, we can see the video has been encoded in DNX HD 85 and then brackets HD 1080p as the source material. Now the other option for importing is the link file, like I suggested. So if we click that, it now disables the transcode options. So let's select the next clip below in the card folder, so 9110.mov. And let's put it in the same folder, and then we've got that set to link, and let's just import. And as you'll have noticed, it's imported the file straight away without any transcoding, so effectively you can start editing with that. And we know that we've linked it and this isn't transcoded because, again, if you have a look and expand your video rushes bin here and scroll along, you'll see that it's actually in its original camera native codec, and Avid is basically got its own plugin to basically read this, hang on a minute, to read this particular file. So either option is valid, but obviously if you are against it in time and you want to start syncing and editing, you can use the link folder, the link option. The import option as well does utilize additional hard drive space, so that's something to be aware of. So depending on the size of your project, I would bear in mind what compression you use, and if at all you transcode. But I would always suggest 9 times out of 10 to transcode your material beforehand. Right, so we've got some footage in our bin now, and effectively I just want to show the second alternative to importing. So if we right click again in our video rushes bin and go to input, you notice the import media tab. Now if we select that and import some more footage, let's go to our project and load up there we go, let's try 9112. Open that. You'll notice if you import media straight away without this source browser, it will transcode on cue automatically. Something to bear in mind, that's one of the drawbacks of the import media option, is it will just transcode. Traditionally that's what Avid does, so it will do this automatically. So if you want to import stuff without transcoding, you want to load up your source browser and go to link and then select your rushes. So if you do not have this window, you can find it if you right click in your bin and look for source browser. Okay, thank you very much for this segment, and I will see you in part 3.